This is Pete Finch from Get Ready to Rock, talking to the guitar legend, innovator, sound engineer and guitar guru effects, everything, Mr. Roger Mayer.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic to have you here. We're going to talk about sound principally, aren't we?
Well, yeah.
And work our way around that and talk about some of the people that you've been involved in. Most notably Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley, the Isley Brothers and everybody else that you want to tell everybody about. But above all, Rog, the one reason I really wanted to do this in the year 2014 is that this marks the 50th anniversary of your first starting to make guitar effects, I believe.
Yeah, we go back to 1964 when the first success of some of the first Fuzz boxes I made were used by, Jimmy Page and Big Jim Sullivan on several British hit records, yeah.
And I believe it was also on a song by PJ Proby.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Hold Me, is that the one?
Well, I think it was Satisfaction was the one, but maybe the first one, that was the major hit, yeah.
So, going back to those days then, I guess this was the era of BBC engineers in white coats that George Martin once talked about when the Beatles...
Yeah, very much so, yes. So records were made in not quite a clinical atmosphere.
Sterile kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't rock and roll, really.
Yeah. But was there any kind of antipathy towards what you wanted to do, or did they think you were just too far left field for what was going on?
No, not at all. I think the music business back then was always looking for new sounds and new direction, because that was coming from America, fast and furious, you know.
More so than here, I guess.
But basically, England was played definitely catch up.
Yeah. But of course, I think you already had relationships established with the likes of Jimmy Page, who was a session guitarist at the time, and
that's right.
Beck and everybody. So that was your way into to making your ideas reality at the time. Would that be?
Well, absolutely, yeah. Because if you design a piece of electronics that subsequently got used on a hit record, you were in, weren't you?
Yeah, and that happened to you very early on.
Absolutely, yeah. When
I guess the first year of doing that.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So there are a couple of parallels I want to draw up in a minute, and one of them is, we talked about this before we went on camera, was the fact that you've always been chasing sound and you've been mesmerised by sound, much in the way that Les Paul was, in a different kind of way, because he was a kind of innovator.
Yes, basically, I mean, I've always been interested in the sound, and when I first met Jimmy Page and we used to go back to his house and listen to the American records, we were all saying, well, how do they get that sound? Or that's a great new sound. So I guess the sound was changing, very quickly then. Obviously, because in 1955, 9 years previously, was the birth of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And then we went through the introduction of Chuck Berry and so on and so forth, and then the Stones were just beginning. Which I got to see them at the very first.
You did?
Yeah, when they were starting out. So, the music was moving quickly, so from one year to another was a big difference. And your own background is very, very interesting. You want to tell us something about that? Because you came from more of a scientific background than an actual music background, didn't you? Well, that was a daytime job, but really, as it happened was, I'm always interested in the music and the electronic side of it. My father, I grew up with an engineering background because of the father had the engineering factory.
Oh, really?
And so...
did he encourage you to go down that kind of path?
Well, the option was did I go and work for my father, which the father suggested I didn't. It would be better for our relationship if I got some experience outside of working with him, because he didn't want to, what should we say, you'd always be the boss's son if you worked for your dad. Yeah. So we didn't do that. So then I went to work for the Amnesty Research Laboratories in Teddington, and I worked on vibrational and acoustical analysis. So even though it wasn't music, we were
at that point.
We were capturing vibration and acoustics and analysing them, basically for the.
But that's when your passion kind of started, really.
Well, no, it started about 2 or 3 years before that. I was interested in the electronics and the music. Yeah. It just happened that the daytime job was involved with vibration and acoustics. Yeah.
And again, did you have any resistance from musicians, given the fact that you came from that background? Or
no, absolutely not. No. They were absolutely thrilled to have access to a new sound. You see, that could give them a cutting edge. You see. That's what it was about.
And given your role in this, you know, it surprised me that you never actually embraced some production at any point. Was that never on your radar?
What, producing the
yeah,
music?
Yeah.
Well,
because, you know, after all, if the role of a producer is to enhance what an artist's vision is, original, but that's very much what you did with the...
Yeah, but I think at the time, you know, looking back upon it, you know, the producers that were, should we say, had their feet in the door at the record company were people like, you know, Shel Talmy and other American producers, and they're very much a different style of producer than I would have been. I think the first time I got to, should we say, explore the potential of what I could do was with Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
So that was...
Well, you're the guy that effectively gave him all those amazing sounds and...
Well, I didn't play the guitar, but
which is another question we'll come to in a minute.
But certainly Jimmy and I, you know, talked about the possibilities, and I certainly helped Jimmy in that respect. Yeah.
But before we explore your relationship with Jimmy and those wonderful sounds, I think one of the points of departure is the fact that you're firmly of the view that a guitarist's sound ultimately comes from what's in his head and his fingers.
Absolutely.
It isn't reliant just on the new technology, even though you are, ironically enough, making all these wonderful foot pedals.
Well, yeah, I mean, at the same time, it goes back to the analogy that you could have the same pencil that Picasso used and the same art book that he used, but you're not going to draw like him. So, the fact of the matter is, a guitar player has to have vision in his head.
Yeah.
First of all, before he would talk to me and then say, "Can you do this?"
Yeah.
Because the possibilities of what I can actually do are limitless.
Yeah.
So
they need to be channeled as well, of course.
Well, they need to be channeled, and the sounds have to be absolutely appropriate for the particular song in question.
Yeah. And that was very much the case in all your career, in fact, because when you look at the artists that you work with, we mentioned Jimi Hendrix, who will come back to the Isley Brothers. It's a very broad-based career, of course. Bob Marley, Stevie Wonder, who you made synthesizers for, I believe, and all that kind of stuff. You never stop still. That's a mark of your whole career.
No, I've always had that motto, you know, forward ever, backward never, you know. And you know, and the thing is that, you know, people can experience the difference. They can hear the difference, you know. That you must never forget. You must never lose track of the common denominator. Is that when people listen to something, virtually instantaneously they make a decision up whether they like it or not.
Which brings us to another little point we were talking off camera about earlier on, and which is the well, I suppose you go back to the era of the singles where you've got to catch everybody in the first 10 seconds, really.
Well, absolutely. I mean,
which is what producers used to do, of course.
Well, absolutely. A radio station's idea to become popular or infamous in a radio parlance in America was to get a breakout single, wasn't it? A regional breakout single, which meant that they had to discover an audience before anybody else did. And start playing it in heavy rotation, and then they would get a breakout. And this obviously happened to Elvis Presley with Sun Records and a whole number of other artists that broke out of Memphis or the South or wherever the music was broken by a particular DJ and a radio station. So for a radio station to do that with a single, they had to have a very good song, obviously, and the sound had to be new and fresh. Always.
Which is where you come in.
Yes.
Which is where you come in. And having let's go back then to the I suppose your first big break was Hendrix. How did you meet Jimi Hendrix? For people who don't know this.
I met Jimi Hendrix shortly after my 21st birthday.
Wow.
A few days after my 21 years old. And I go to this club called the Bag of Nails in King Street in Soho, and he was playing there. And the only previous time I had seen Jimmy was I saw him on Ready Steady Go on the television.
As we all did,
As we all did. But I also found out that Jimmy had been playing with a few other artists who I really liked, and you know he was instrumental on that Don Cavay, Mercy,
great
Mercy, a great song, and so you know. After I saw Jimmy on Ready Steady Go, you know, it was just a case of Christ, I've got to see this guitar player. And I spoke to other friends of mine who were in the music business, I said, Roger, you've got to see this guy play, he's fantastic. So yeah.
And having seen him,
Yeah.
did you kind of meet as kindred spirits? Did you get to talk to him about it?
I just talked to him very briefly after the show, and you know, and it was like within a few seconds we were on the same page, you know, and I told him what I did, and he said, oh, you've been working with Jimmy Page and you've done a few records. I said, yeah, I'm really into guitar sounds and different sounds. He said, oh, that's far out, man. He said, why don't you come along to a gig I'm playing a couple of weeks later, and that was at Chislehurst Caves.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And what was your impression when you first seen him? I mean, it's an obvious question, but it must have been to see Jimi Hendrix and he got
first
no
time, yeah, in the back. Well, you seen him on television, yeah, but seeing him live, it was like an epiphany, really,
yeah.
because you're seeing a guitar player who's unfettered.
At the time,
well, yeah, and it's the showmanship he brought.
Yeah.
It's the sheer guitar virtuosity and the energy and the showmanship. You know, this is not a guitar player who looks uncertain about what he's doing.
No.
He's not staring at his shoelaces.
No.
And he's dressed extravagantly and he's putting on a great show, and you know, he's obviously having a great time, and you know.
And he was coming out with all these amazing sounds, most of which, or a significant part of which was down to you, yeah. But you, I think you said to me before that he had a vision that was way beyond anybody else at the time. And when it came to recording, there's a lot more stuff that people haven't even heard about.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We didn't have a problem because after I first met him, you know, like then about 2 or 3 weeks later, we went back to Olympic Studios, and that's when he recorded.
That was the first time.
Yeah, the first time we went in the studio together. And he used the Octavian that I designed, which
that was your first pedal board.
Well, it's one of the pedals. Anyway, to cut a long story short, that's the one that was used on the solo of Purple Haze, and that's the one that gives us its distinctive high frequency, really psychedelic thing. Yeah. And he also did another solo on a previously overdubbed on a previous track called Fire, you know? And we did that both on the same night after playing a gig of Hounslow of all places.
So Ricky Tick,
that's it.
There you go.
So you know, the thing was that after we did the solo, we took the rough mixes back to Chaz's. We listened to that, we were all going, Jesus Christ, you know, are they ready for this?
Yeah.
So Jimmy said, well, they better be, you know, because this is going to be the next single, you see. So in the space of a very short space of time, you know, obviously the singles getting played round, or the rough mixes are getting played round to various people in the inner circle. Everyone's blown away, right?
Yeah.
So then they release Purple Haze as the next single. Now remember, Purple Haze, you're going from a country and western ballad like Hey Joe, albeit with a very nice guitar solo break in the middle of it, into this,
which is another step forward.
Which is then was in, I don't know, I think maybe March it was released. So now that was before any other psychedelia really had been released, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So then,
well, the question is, did you have a grasp of the fact that this was effectively psychedelia?
Well, it wasn't called that, you know.
No.
But
it was part of the lifestyle at the time.
It was part of the lifestyle.
Which wasn't necessarily your lifestyle, of course.
No, not necessarily.
But you were actually providing the sounds for this as a backdrop to a lifestyle.
I mean, I was for all intents and purposes, like hanging out with Jimmy, going to the nightclubs with him.
Yeah, certainly not.
So we all live in the same lifestyle.
Yeah.
Why not? We dress exactly the same, all have the same colour.
No.
But you know, I mean, but that was the interesting thing, that when we sat round, you know, in Chaz's flat with Kathy and Jimmy and I, we realised that we really were far ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Which
we realised then was not such a good thing.
Right.
Because now
the record companies and stuff.
Oh no, the record companies. You don't want to scare the record companies. No. So then Chaz has the master stroke of pulling back a bit and coming the next single, Wind Cries Mary.
Yeah, which is more palatable to the.
Yeah. So
that's good management. Yeah.
Well, it's management and it's foresight, because we knew that 6 months down the road, what Jimmy and I were getting up to in the flat on our own was the prelude to the release of like I Experienced album. See,
Yeah.
but we were 6 months down the road going, Christ, well this is only the beginning. You want to hear what really we can do, or we could.
But then you're moving into the era of inverted commas albums, aren't you? The whole thing about a suite of music almost.
Yeah, but you have to think of it like that, because then
it was a big shift,
Because it was a big shift, big gear shift, and then you have to think of the. All right, you've got Hey Joe, Success, Purple Haze blew everybody away, and then When Christ Mary was nice, and then a few other singles. So then it was, but we were releasing singles every 6 weeks or something.
Well, I guess everybody was really.
Yeah,
that's what you
basically.
did.
Yeah, well, that's what you did. So every 6 weeks, bing, 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 and then that was leading up to the conglomeration of tunes that made up Are You Experienced album.
Yeah.
And that was finally, put together and released. Actually, well, now they call it the Summer of Love, but then, there were 3 major albums from English in England that were released in that summer. Oh, you obviously got your Sergeant Pepper, you got Are You Experienced, and The Cream.
Yeah, the Israeli Gears.
Right.
Yeah.
So that all, they were all released within a very short period of one another.
And once Jimmy, in this instance, knew what you could bring to the party, as it were, and give him in terms of sound and in terms of ideas, I mean, he embraced that, and you
absolutely,
became an integral part of.
Oh yeah. We just hung out together and were planning. Then you see, the thing was that because of Jimmy had only arrived in England like a few weeks before Christmas, right? Yeah. We're only talking really 12 weeks later. Yeah. And there were some pre-arranged gigs and this and that. So there was no time to really set aside to record an album with a nice series of continuous
flow sequencing.
So that couldn't happen until the sort of the autumn of '67. But we were planning that back in March, April, May.
Right.
So because you had to plan 6 months ahead because of the dates.
Of course. Yeah.
And obviously, so that did it. And then the opportunity for Jimmy to record at Monterey, that came up.
Yeah, and of course you followed him over to the States, didn't you?
In '68, yeah. After we did the Axis Boulders Love album,
which again, I mean, it was monster over here in Europe. I'm not sure about America. And the next question was going to be, what was Jimmy's standing when you actually went to the States on that '68 tour with him? Was he breaking back then, or was he still relatively unknown in America?
He was beginning to become quite popular. With the college FM stations and the college circuit, and because FM radio and stereo radio back in '68 was just about
on the cusp
then, and that was coming in,
So was it the case that he had some dates booked in there, and then they put more in, and the tour grew?
In '68. Yeah. I think it was pretty much booked before we
so it was already kind of broken. On that sense. But of course, the American market is completely. I mean, the whole Hendrix thing was so inextricably tied up with the psychedelic London scene, particularly London, I think, because he was still going out to play places like Hull. Nothing wrong with Hull, but all these kind of places, and he was just blowing people's minds because they hadn't seen anything.
Well, they hadn't seen it because they didn't know what was going on in London.
And I wonder if it was the same thing back in the States, because of course he had to come over here to find his context, to find you.
Because I mean, I think in America, '67, Summer of Love, you have to be really into the music business to understand what was going on in San Francisco and this and that.
It's regionally different from Texas.
Completely different, whereas, I mean, they might have had a few hippies in Texas, but certainly not as many as they did in San Francisco.
But as you say, he did Monterey. I don't have the date in front of me, but that was that was a huge turning point for him.
Yeah, it was,
and
more so after the fact, I think.
Can people deal with this? It's of course, and the record business is inherently conservative, small c. It must have been like a tidal wave, really. Just completely, how would they deal with this?
Well, I suppose so. I mean,
you know, we're not talking about the fans now who lap up a lifestyle, and we're talking about corporate executives, and they go, well, hold on a minute.
Yeah, I guess the American, I mean, you know, Jimmy was the first real sort of pop act that was signed to Frank Sinatra's record.
Reprise, yeah.
So that was a big.
Well, a perfect example of what I'm talking about, really, because their expectations would have been, you know, the balladeer and all the rest of it, and along comes.
No, I don't think they were. I think they were fully on board about what he could do.
What he could do, right? Okay.
And they jumped in feet first, you know.
Yeah, and of course he had Chaz by his side, who paved the way very smartly.
Absolutely, yeah.
And your relationship with him was good?
Oh yeah, diamond.
Yeah. And so, having done the tour back in '68, was it at that point that you decided to stay in America, or did you?
I met my future wife in America when I was on tour with Jimmy. Right. And after the tour, you know, I was very tired, and Jimmy went out to California to do a few things. So I came back to England.
Is this when you went to Olympic Studio?
Yeah, I did you know,
somewhere where you'd work
a few months. Olympic, you know, keep my hand in, you know, and helped them out for a bit and worked there. And then by the time, then I got married in around about October and November of that era. Right. You know, came back to America for a while. Yeah. Came back to England for a while, and then finally I went back to America in '69.
'69. But by which time your guitar pedals and effects and everything else must have really.
No, I wasn't doing so much guitar pedals back then at all. No. I went back to America and was really the first thing I did when I went back to America was with the recording studio equipment.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So
you're building studios.
Oh yeah. So I was building limiters, equalizers, and so all the famous studios in New York all had some of my stuff. And by the time I think we installed our first full recording studio that I designed and built was in 1974 in New York, and that was a big concert of mine, and that we got #1 record on the Billboard with that straight away. Then we did the Ramones, we did the Talking with my concert, Tony Bon Jovi started off there. So, and then by that time I'd already been selling equipment to, you know, you name it, you know, I was there at the beginning of the record plant, Electric Ladyland, Media Sound, Hit Factory, A&R, all kinds of studios, so Atlantic Records.
And so that was another, because the one strand to your whole career is the fact you've always been moving forward. You've never rested on your laurels. You've done this, you move on to something else. So at this point you're working in studios, you're building studios. So did you was Hendrix still around by then? Or?
Oh yeah. No, we also remained friends and talked. You know, I mean, Jimmy was moving around a lot, and I was kind of based in New York, so we got together there. Or if he went to London, and I went back to London a couple of times a year, so we would get together when we could, you know. Yeah. But we had a different agenda because I wasn't about just hanging around, you know, with him. No. Because by that time, after I guess, you know, really sort of after Woodstock and this and that, kind of Jimmy's career became less focused. Because when Chaz kind of departed, so the next album, Electric Ladyland, took a long time to put together.
But it was still a masterpiece.
Yeah, but it didn't have the cohesion of musical body that, say, Axis did. So, and I don't think Jimmy was that thrilled with it, you know. No? Really. I think, you know, some of his frustration shows.
Right. Yeah. Right. So your next big thing, I guess, must have been Stevie Wonder after that.
Well, what I
moving into analog synthesizers.
While Jimmy was still alive, and Electric Lady was being built, you know, I was called in. You know, was going obviously down Electric Ladyland Studios, and two producers started working with Stevie Wonder. And they obviously knew about Stevie heard about my association with Jimi Hendrix, and Stevie was the first guy with Malcolm Cecil and Bob Marley, who were his producers. They were the first ones who were trying. We basically built a polyphonic analog synthesizer, which is enormous in size. Well, I mean about 8-12 foot in diameter, and it was called a Tonto. So They had this huge synthesizer that was made up of various components from Moog synthesizers, ARP synthesizers, and so forth. And Malcolm and I helped them to build the interfacing between the various modules of the synthesizer to try and get them all playing tune and simultaneously.
Right.
But back then, you know, it was a bit of a nightmare job, really, a bit tricky, and it took a few of us, you know, to implement it. But those synthesizer sounds that Stevie used on the 3 albums, you know, talking about Inhibitions and Music of My Mind.
Great albums.
That really began, you know, the use of synthesizers properly in modern pop music, you know.
And again, was there a resistance to using newfangled technology?
No, not at all. No, because once again, people like Stevie and
was a visionary himself.
Visionary, he always wants to go forward. He doesn't want to make any other record that sounds like an old Motown record.
No.
Or sounds like the Temps or you know, whatever. So it's all about breaking new ground, isn't it? Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And having done so, I guess the fact that all those records were major successes helped you enormously. Helped your profile, helped you in with other people. I guess
yes, to a certain extent, but at the same time as other future artists that I might work with, I still got the question is, well, what can you do for me?
Yeah,
so, I mean,
but that is presumably what artists such as your next port of call, I think it was the Isley Brothers, and they presumably asked that question of you at the time. Yeah,
well, they obviously, you know, respect to Stevie Wonder, and, you know, they were both signed to the same label, they were both on Motown at one point in time. And the thing
that's true,
that Stevie Wonder was maybe one of the first black acts really to you know, cross over in a big way.
Very much so.
You know, with a mainstream audience, and they wanted me to try and help them to do that. You know.
And really, if you think about it, looking back, your role in doing that, in crossing these artists over, was very much what a producer. In recent years, you know, in the last 20, the cult of the producer, you know.
Yeah, well, producer is one thing. I'd like to call myself a lot more in cinematic, like in terms of the cinema, like a sound supervisor. So you can
shape it up.
Well, you all have a vision, you know, for how the sound could be. I don't want to be sitting around there and, you know, I couldn't sit in the studio and supervise every damn take of everything.
But what would your relationship actually be with a producer on an album like that then?
Well, they left me alone.
They did?
Yeah, because obviously I can do something that they can't do.
Yeah. And the artist is very happy with it?
Well, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be there, you know, if I'm not needed, I don't want to be in the studio, you know, so watching paint dry, you know. You know.
Were you surprised at the success of those albums, or did you recognise that as being great material when you started working on it?
Having had some experience of what a hit record sounds like in a control room, I wasn't surprised.
No, it was good stuff, but it was groundbreaking stuff at the time.
It was fresh and new, which is what made it exciting. Else it wouldn't have been exciting.
No, and I guess on that very. On that basis, that's probably why the Isley Brothers came knocking. Then, how did you? Because actually, it's a strange, not strange, but it's a adventurous career pattern, if you could call it that. You've moved from Hendrix to Stevie Wonder, and then you've gone to the Isley Brothers. Now, the Isley Brothers again were known for a particular what they were doing,
but at that time, right, that I came on board, they had 3 younger brothers.
Right.
So one of their albums called 3+3.
3+3. That's a big album.
So you had the elder brothers and then the younger brothers.
Yeah.
And the younger brothers who were one was 21 or one was 20s.
Yeah.
So they were early. So they were very keen.
Yeah.
To jump on board and break some new ground in the black music scene and cross over, to a more international scene, because. You know, traditionally, the guitar player in a big black band doesn't get many guitar breaks.
No, not in that.
No, they get 16 bars at a night. You know. So it wasn't guitar bass. So the Ernie.
Hence my question about the Isley Brothers. You know, because they weren't. Yeah.
So in other words, their vision was to do more of a rock funk thing that had the roots in the past and still had links to the neighbourhood.
Yeah.
So it was very important
that's
as a black band that they had roots to the neighbourhood.
Yeah.
See?
But the interesting thing is they placed their trust in you, which was a big thing at the time, I guess. You know?
Well, yeah, but at the same time, as hadn't I immediately been producing the sound and the results, you wouldn't last very long.
No, but it seemed to exponentially grow for you all the time. Every step along the way.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
You were breaking new. This is the really interesting thing, and you're always breaking new ground. You seem to be fearless, actually, Roger.
You were never afraid to. Why not?
Yeah, self-confident, of course, in your own abilities. But it's also about finding the right context for what you could do, of course.
Well, that's right. Yeah, because if you start with a blank piece of paper, the interesting part is, well, what can I do that will be exciting? You see?
Yeah. That's so. Yeah.
And if, you know, being able to copy something is like
doesn't hold a lot of interest for you.
None at all.
And I think your career bears that out, of course.
Yeah, hopefully.
And you did 8 years with the Isley Brothers. That was quite a good stretch.
Yeah, all the way through till 3+3 disbanded. Yeah. I mean, Isley just be Isley. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And then was the next port of call Bob Marley? Was it?
No, before that, we kind of involved with friends of mine from Atlantic Records. We were I had a Junior Marvin connection.
Oh, great guitar player.
Yeah, and I did an album with him in England and co-wrote about 16
guitar
tracks
player.
with him.
Yeah.
Bob's guitar player.
Yeah.
And then at the same time,
And you co-wrote with him?
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and played on the record.
Yeah, because this man plays guitar as well.
Yeah, so I was doing that, and then we also met, you know, George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic.
Which was really happening at the time.
It was really happening, and they were sort of going hand in hand with the Isley Brothers.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like a family, you know, we're Earth, Wind and Fire, the Isley Brothers, the Commodores, Graham Central Station, you know, the Pointer Sisters, all these people. Yeah, we were all playing similar shows. And or at the same time at the shows. So I was very, you know, like on board with the
with what was happening,
with what was happening and the boys, you know. Yeah.
And well, I mean, at that point you've moved into another little area, and I guess your expertise, the name goes around again.
Well, you always got. It always comes back to the fact, you got to meet Roger. You know, he was Jimmy's right hand man.
Yeah.
You know.
But more than that, you've done a lot more than Jimmy at this point.
I know. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But of course, that's the crown in your jewel, I guess. I mean, that's the
that's one thing that people tend to always hark back to and remember. Yeah.
So before we move on in terms of your linear career, in terms of the things you were making at the time, let's go back to the pedals and what.
The pedals really. I never really started selling pedals commercially until in the 80s.
Till later, okay.
So I was heavily involved in the recording studio electronics.
Still there.
And you know, building and installing recording studios, making equipment for recording dialogue for film.
Oh, right.
And commercials, did recording studios, commercials. By the time of the 1980s, I think my electronics have been on about 18 major Hollywood movies, all Spike Jones films. We won 35 Clios for top adverts. Won umpteen, you know.
Almost a parallel career with Hollywood.
I mean the records. I mean, I had a 1.8 million. I was helped the Isley's with an average of 1.8 million records for about 10 albums. That's why I got 15 gold and platinum records on the wall.
Which we should have filmed before we started, but never mind.
Never mind.
Do that
anyway, that's beside the point. So, you know, and then I met Rick James as well.
Rick James, the late Rick James.
And
how did you get on with him? He was a wild character as well.
He's wild, but you know...
He knew what he was doing, Focus?
Yeah, very much so. And Mario, the Big M, you know, from Atlantic, introduced me to him. And as long as you stood up to him, you know, he was fine, you know. I mean, it's just one of them guys, you know, a very extrovert type of guy. Yeah, but it's fine. I'm, you know, I mean, no more so than being around, you know, the Isley Brothers and Lionel Richie, and they're all great characters, you know.
Yeah.
They want to be around other people who are characters who stand up with them. You can't be wishy-washy amongst around
No,
these people.
that's a very good point.
Else you're not going to be invited to hang out with them socially.
Well, I respect you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a road mate, I'm just there to help, you know.
Yeah.
That's the difference. That's why I never want to be employed by the management or the band. Basically, you can't, you know, it's not that you can't employ me. I'm not employed by these people.
No.
Sometimes, in many instances, you know, I'm not for hire. I'll donate my services to help you.
Yeah.
But don't charge for it.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Because then you start getting beholden to these people.
Yes, and then you've got to make it to order, and I can understand.
And they don't want to do that, really.
So, it would be about 1978 then where you hooked up with Bob Marley.
Before that, when they did the One Love concert.
I
I don't know. You have to look in the books.
77 maybe. I don't know.
Anyway, around about that time, yeah, Junior Marvin. I think when he joined the Wailers,
Yeah.
within a few weeks, he called me down. He invited me over to meet Bob in Jamaica just before the One Love concert. Right?
Right.
So he flew me down to Jamaica, stayed with Junior, and I got to meet Bob Marley for the first time. And
How was that?
oh, it's great. I went to Bob Marley. I said, very curious. I said, excuse me, Bob. I said, what do you want me actually to do for you?
Right.
So he said, Roger, he said, I know you were with Jimi Hendrix and you love Jimi Hendrix and all that. I said, yes, but he said, can you make me sound international? I said, right answer. I said, yeah.
It's got a visionary sort of...
I said, yeah. I said, because, you know, right now, I said, you know, you're a very good reggae band that sounds, what should we say, very authentic.
Yeah.
And rustic.
Yeah.
So, but that, you know.
Rustic, yeah. That's true.
And I said, but you can only go so far on that. He said, yeah, I know that. He said, Chris Blackwell, he said, I know that. I said, well, then sonically, we're going to have to go right through your band and make it sound international. So before the One Love concert, I went through every damn guitar they were playing, took it all apart, put them all back together, did all the frets, set the whole bloody thing up. The guitars had never been in tune, they'd just been deteriorating in the tropics. Did the same thing with the bass and this and that. I said, now play.
But again, the obvious question there is, you would have thought that a producer would have picked up on that. But
No. See, producers, well, they obviously don't think like I do.
How much leverage they've got as well, I guess.
How much leverage, and also they don't have the tools in their bag to accomplish what I accomplished.
No.
So after we first played the first concert, right?
Yeah.
Because then I did the work about a week before they did the famous Siaga Mandy concert. Then they go on stage, and after that show, all the higher Rasta brethren, right, all the Bob Marley, all come up to Bob, and they couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
You never heard your sound so true, you know.
Oh.
And very emotional.
Right.
I said that, it's unbelievable. So that was the beginning of my thing with Bob, and so I helped with Bob, and you know, the next album, where I could, the next album was Exodus, which was that was where the sound of Bob Marley really changed. The actual sound of the guitars is everything true. I mean, no one ever touched Bob's guitar except me. Or Family Man, his basses, they all come to me still to this day. You know, so I mean, that's getting the sound to, you know, perfect harmony of the guitars. But that changes the whole perception of how a band sounds. I can hear a band, and if one instrument's out of tune, it drives me mad. You know.
Well, it would do, because you're a sound engineer,
yeah.
Yeah, and a perfectionist as
yeah,
well. Of
well,
course.
you know, because when it does sound right, then it's powerful. You know, and that's the whole thing, isn't it?
And the whole social side of that, you got on.
Very nice, yeah. I mean, but the only thing you see, Bob. I mean, I'll be honest with Bob. I mean, obviously, his upbringing was, you know, he was a bit of an outcast himself because of his mixed colour.
Yeah.
So all I ever said to Bob was, I said, look, please don't put me don't put me in any position where I'm going to be compromised.
No.
I said, because I said, I'm not afraid of anyone, but I don't put me in a compromising situation. I said it's not fair. I would never do the same to you. He said,
No.
oh, you know, so he said I can understand. I said fine. I said, you know, I said,
And that was quite a
that was it.
departure. Yeah.
I said, you know, I said to him, you know, that's all I ask of you. You know, don't.
Yeah.
You know, if you think I need protection,
Yeah.
make sure I've got a bodyguard.
Yeah. So you had a world view on this at the time, you know. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I spent, you know, as a boy. I mean, my dad, you know, I grew up in Africa from till I was age too. So I'm used to being around,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that type of people.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, I'm not intimidated by them.
No, quite so. So did you? Was your relationship with Bob all the way until he died, or did you?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And Virginia, of course. Yeah, still.
And did you then go back to the studio thing, or what happened after that?
No, I still doing the studio thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there wasn't enough work to get around the 1980s and this and that.
Big change in the music
There was
industry.
a big
of course.
change in music in business. A lot of B studios were going out of business and so forth. So much the same as like we got kind of nowadays, where people want to record at home, but really haven't got the nous or the ability to do it properly.
Yeah.
I was getting a lot of inquiries. Oh, what about those pedals you built for Jimi Hendrix and all this and so forth.
Interesting.
So we started to make a few guitar pedals, you see.
And was the Octavia the first one?
Yeah, the Octavia was the first one we put out.
Now explain to everybody what the function of that pedal is and what it actually does.
Octavia,
in layman's terms.
Layman's terms. Octavia basically doubles the frequency of the signal you put in.
Right.
But it's more than that. If you imagine this, it would be like if you've got two mirrors and you face them towards one another,
Yeah.
and you put an image in front of the mirror, you get multiple mirror images
Right.
to infinity. And electronically, that's kind of what the Octavia does. So it multiplies up the imaging.
And the tone, presumably.
Well, it goes up. Predominantly, it goes up an octave.
Right.
But because mathematically it's doubling, it means you've got to be careful of the intervals you're playing together, because you're gonna generate mathematic dissonances. You know,
Yeah.
so it ain't gonna sound right.
So in your opinion, you can think of certain guitar players that had the ability to feel, to feel that, to actually play it fluidly, and others.
Yeah, there's not many, because basically like Jimi, or we could say Jimi Hendrix, the wah pedal.
Yeah, very much so.
When you hear Jimi Hendrix use a wah-wah,
Yeah.
right, say on Voodoo Child or any of the other records, after you hear that and you hear what Jimmy's done with the wah-wah, now what are you going to do?
Yeah.
There's different.
It's this whole thing about moving forward again.
So in other words, the actual use of a wah-wah pedal can only go so far as your imagination.
Yeah.
So most people, and this is what happens, is when they drum, if you hand them an effect, right?
Yeah.
They're going to play something they've already played.
Yeah.
And say, oh, that doesn't sound very good, because, see, they a new effect. But you take someone like Hendrix or an artist, right? You hand them something new, they're going to play something they've never ever played before. They immediately grasp the sound or the
possibilities,
instantaneously, and play something that's different.
And that's what marks him out from the norm, I guess. Not just him, but people like that.
Well, it would be like, in the...
who would you point to nowadays that would have that ability, for example? Is there anybody that comes to mind?
No, I don't know. Really. I don't.
All right.
I mean,
In that interim time, then, who else was there apart from Hendrix that you would respect in that?
I think in certain genres, I think obviously Stevie Ray Vaughan was a very good guitar player. Yeah. And he played with heart and passion, And there have been other players who are very good, in their genres.
Yeah.
Right? But I think, we talk about guitarists. Let's be fair. The major difference about Jimi Hendrix and all the rest of them, right? And this is not bringing no disrespect to anybody, is that not only could Jimi play, right, very well.
Yeah.
The guitar in any position behind his, in between his legs and this and that.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic showman, right?
Yeah, it was all part of it, yeah.
he wrote some great songs.
Yeah.
He wasn't a bad singer.
And he had a good grounding.
And the most important thing, right, is that when you see a guitar player, most of them, when they sing and play the guitar, they take the foot off the accelerator on the guitar. The energy drops when they start singing. That was seamless with Jimi. You couldn't tell the difference. The guitar virtuosity when he was singing or playing was seamless. And that wouldn't, and something like B.B. King is a prime example of someone who stops playing the guitar to sing.
Yeah.
All the energy drops, and that was, you see, that's what's different. You know, you can have there's the other fabulous guitar players, but they can't write songs and they can't sing.
No.
They certainly can't sing and play
At the same time.
at the same time, and they're not the showman.
No.
So so if you added all the attributes that Hendrix had, he's maybe once in the century.
Yeah. Yeah.
See?
And we all know that, even without the benefit of hindsight, of course, he was just something else. But I mean, it poses the question, of course, had he lived, and he could say the same thing about Lennon and various other people, you know, where would they have found their niche nowadays, do you suppose?
Well, I think in the case of someone who was so artistic and future thinking as Jimi, he would have had to be involved with a medium that was continuously expanding and was totally open-ended, and that has proven to be really, there's only one medium that has done that, and that's in the realms of science fiction and special effects. Which we started with, you know, Lucas and Spielberg, and it's gone on to great films like Avatar and all these people. I mean, there's people in the film business who waited 7 years, like, you know, to make Avatar because the technology didn't exist.
Yeah, no,
but he didn't. But the thing is, I respect about those people is they didn't give up on their vision of what it could be.
No.
And at the end of the time, not only did they follow their vision and they bet their pants on it, they were true to it, and they saw it through to the end.
Didn't compromise.
No, and I've got utmost respect for filmmakers who do that. You know, they're pushing the you know, the edge. And I mean, you know, Lucas and all those people, all that equipment for the CGs and the special effects didn't exist. They had to build it from square one. You know, using all the top boffins from Silicon Valley to develop the computers to do that.
And it comes back to the original vision they had and what they...
Exactly, and they followed it, you know.
And you'd say, really, that somebody like Hendrix had a similar vision in the musical...
In other words, if we were talking about a sound that we might want to use on a record, yeah? There was never the question between the three of us, like Chaz, Jimi and I, of where... The only other question was, can we do it? Yes. I can imagine we can do it. Great. Next question, when can we do it? Fine. The next question, the question that never arose was how much will it cost?
Really?
No.
Just went for it.
Yeah, because how could you put a
Price on it, yeah.
How could you put a price on the technology that Lucas and all those people developed?
No,
See what I mean? You couldn't.
Yeah.
And it turned into a billion.
But was that you know, going back to the Hendrix era, that was just that was the times. I mean, there was this can-do attitude and
well, yeah,
the whole cultural shifts.
You definitely had a can-do attitude because you obviously had the you got the American space initiative, the Apollo missions and so on and so forth.
And again, it goes back to the context and the times.
Yeah, and you got the Vietnam War.
So where does this all fit in now, other than what you just mentioned with the films and stuff? And as you say, it took one guy 7 years to realise his vision. I mean, is there room for artistic endeavour like that in contemporary culture? That's the question.
I cannot see why not. I mean, to me, writing it off and saying there can't be any future is ridiculous. Because I mean, you know, you've got limitless possibilities with video, and the point is, you know, the video technology at home now is expanding, you know, into 4K and Super HD, whatever you want to call it. So people now have got so much access to great, you know, fantasy, haven't they?
They have really, yeah.
You know, Transformers, whatever you want to look at these films, whether you like them or not, the vision and the technology behind them is fantastic, and that goes all the way down to the kids. I mean, they've got wonderful
Very much
animation
so.
thing. You know, the little kids will watch, you know, Reef, and they watch all the wonderful little things,
Yeah.
you know, ants, and you know, so Pixar and Disney and all these people are entertaining people all the way down, all to the age
And
group.
they're kind of kindred spirits to you, really. Isn't
Well,
it?
yeah, they are, but they're in the video world, and of course, you know,
Different thing.
there's a lot more money in the video world, the same as it is in the video games. Yeah.
It kind of brings me back to right at the beginning of the conversation when I didn't follow through the parallel of you and Les Paul. You both chasing sound. That's
Yeah.
the common denominator. But of
Yeah.
course, he reached an impasse. I think it was in the 50s when him and Mary Ford got sidelined by the Beatles, really, and the whole
Yeah.
new rock and roll thing. And rather than throw his toys out the pram, he just became an innovator and carried on doing whatever he could do with what he loved. And it seems to me you've done the same. I say yours has been a lot more seamless. Career.
Yeah, well, maybe because of my background and you know
Yeah.
what I can design, I've got a much
More possibilities.
more possibilities, and I've got a much broader team of associates to
Now, yeah.
now
Yeah.
to call in on, you know.
Yeah.
That's what makes it interesting, you know.
So, for the guitar players out there, you started off with the Octavia more or less, and you developed that through. I mean, you can mention a couple of your brand names that they would recognise.
Oh well,
What do you do?
we took some keynote sounds, obviously, you know. I mean, you've got the Octavia is a very distinct sound, very limited, of course, got to be used in context on the right song.
Yeah.
We do a very broad range of different distortions
Yeah.
to cater for all types of music.
And did that start with a kind of fuzz guitar originally? That
well,
kind of sound?
fuzz is too much of a very generic term,
Right.
you know. So people want, you know, guitar players want
Different tones.
They want sustain, they want articulation, they want their actual sound of the guitar to portray an emotion, which is what we do with Hendrix.
Yeah.
So we're very careful, say like on the Hendrix tracks, to use different distortions and different tones for each track to make them appropriate for the actual...
Colour the whole album.
and colour the mood of the tune,
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah.
there would be no point using the same, you know, exact tones. Be like tying the hands of a painter and telling him you can't mix it this colour
Yeah.
differently,
No, that's
you
a
know.
good
So I
analogy.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean that's always interesting. So every guitar player has got, you know, different way of playing, different this and that.
Signature styles. Yeah.
Signature style, and they finger differently, so they've got a particular idea of what might be, you know, that they want to hear, you know.
And what did you think of Shredders then when that all came out? All the post Eddie Van Halen thing, Steve Vai and all these people. If they're the ones I should be talking
Well,
about.
the thing is, certain types of the music, right? Probably history will designate them into the right context. They have a limited amount of appeal because of the
Style they play.
style they play, and speed of notes, which turns into a blur, is not really attractive.
No. Although somebody like Satriani, of course, has worked in melodies a lot in his late career and
you'd have to, but
slowed down noticeably. You
yeah, but
know.
at the same time, somebody like that would then have to go and write some really great songs.
Yeah, yeah.
And they get remembered.
And that's what they all seem to struggle with.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Back to Jimi,
Well,
he wrote great songs.
He wrote great songs, and I think about Steve Vai, who's a great guitar player, but he's found his own feet now. But I only mention him because, of course, he was a disciple, if that's the right word, of Frank Zappa. Who's
Yeah.
the thing about Zappa was a great guitar player, but he had all these incredible ideas
Oh,
right across the
absolutely,
board.
yeah.
And of course, he's had 110 million great players in his band, but none of them have emulated him in any shape or form.
Well, because they never had the primary vision that he did.
Which is what we were talking about earlier on, of course, and that in terms of sound is what you've chased all your life, I guess.
Well, yeah,
You found it in sound
and motivating it to new, because if you listen to records from the interesting thing is if you go back to listen to records from different eras,
Yeah.
they do have fingerprint sounds on them, don't they?
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
So to me, it's kind of nice and important to take a band and what it amounts you've helped them achieve the sound logo. That's what I call it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So you can recognise that the band from the way they sound,
Yeah.
or the guitar player from the way they sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
There would be no point having a million bands that sound like a million other bands.
Well, there are a lot of bands like that, of course, but
they, of course, make up, it's probably 95% of the majority.
Yeah, but the kind of person then, or guitar player that appeals to you is somebody where you can, a soulful player. I mean,
I want to see a guitar player who's playing from his heart and his soul.
Yeah.
And I want to see him react to the audience, and I want to see him sweat, and I want to see him, have fun. Basically, and I don't want to see him looking at his shoes and looking bored.
No, we had this discussion with Chris Duarte, of course, who does all that tricky stuff, but also can play some beautiful notes.
Yeah.
And incorporate that space which colours the tracks.
It's important, yeah.
And so we also want to mention one of your latest things, which is the business of, I said going back, you correct me, but recreating an analogue sound in a digital format. Is that?
Yeah. Basically, what we're doing now, or what we've accomplished now, is we this is in response to many producers coming to me and saying they were unhappy with the end result of the digital recordings they had made and mixed.
Yeah.
But they were very happy with the fact that they could go back and listen to, say, a Hendrix or a Beatles or another recording made in the 70s that had been transferred to a CD.
Right.
So this inspired me to say, well, obviously the actual digital medium itself isn't at full. In other words, the CD player isn't at full.
Right.
So it would be like, blaming the AM radio on a pickup track in 1965 and saying, this is incapable of playing hit records.
Yeah.
Of course it can. So, it's the same sort of thing. So I went back into it, and what immediately appeared from the tests I ran with my friends, was that if you actually presented the digital recorder with an analog sound,
right,
like it had been recorded on tape first, which is what some of the top producers have been doing,
and give it that warmth.
It sounded great.
Yeah.
So I developed a solid state analog version of that.
And what's that called?
It's called the 456.
Right.
And it's named after the famous mastering tape, which is Ampex 456.
Right.
And the process that we is called 456 HD.
Yeah.
And we've started doing that in England with some of the top producers. We've got Paul Stacey on board from the Black Crowes and this and that. Dave Erenga, who's working with Roger Daltrey, is trying it out. And I've got tomorrow.
Interesting that they're going back to that. Not going back, it's
embracing
that.
That's what the record companies and the other people are wanting.
Yeah.
After we recorded a few tracks for a couple of new bands that are emerging, brand new bands. I'll play them for you later. That the record company flipped when they heard it. Wow, what a great sound! Where was that recorded? So instantly, you got instant recognition.
Yeah.
And when it was submitted to the radio station, some of the tracks were promoted to Record of the Week. See, that's not based on the way they sound. It's not hyping them.
No,
it's just saying, have listened to that, you see. So I really kind of wanted to have a blind test. Because I knew that when I met these producers and they said, what's this, Roger? I said, well, look, this is what it does. And literally the guy said, wow, in 5 minutes, I want one. The unit sold itself in 5 minutes. Oh, wow, you can use it on this.
Artist driven.
Artist driven, it has to be.
Industry driven.
Industry driven, because that's because they like the way it sounds. And it brings something that's, what should we say, musical back to the music.
Yeah.
It actually really, I'm not being funny, but it makes an awful lot of the other stuff not sound particularly good. Because once you've heard this, you go, wow, this is how it could sound.
Yeah. But I guess it's just germane to some different forms of music. It's not really going to...
Oh, it could be on anything.
Right. But I can't imagine the dance kind of people being...
Yeah, they love it.
Yeah?
I've done it on electronic music, I've done it on fusion music, everything.
And talk. We weren't talking about this, but you just mentioned electronic music, and I'm going into a kind of diversion here. But are you interested in that at all? That's the latest thing that's going on.
Yeah. Because the fact of the matter is, when you speak to hip hop artists, and acts that are primarily beat driven,
beat
driven, they will take, samples from say George Clinton or wherever, and the idea for them is to come up on stage and make the crowd dance. And
simple as that, really.
Simple as that, and then have a few dances behind them, and actually put on a great show. So there we are. You see, they are faced with sounding good.
Yeah.
See? And the audience reacts to that.
And we're coming back to sound in that.
It's all about that. It's all about the sound, because you are, as a musician or anyone who produces music, only judged by the way you sound.
And really, in a way, that's taken the focus away from guitar players as well. It's not just...
Well, it could be anything, couldn't it?
Yeah. But it's interesting that when you think back to the early 80s, whenever that was, and it was all chord driven...
Yeah, but that's pretty horrible, really.
Yeah, well, it's as desperate as it could get.
Well, I didn't like it, you know. I mean, if you took some of that synthesizer music in the 80s and then compared it to what Stevie Wonder did in the 70s, I don't think there's really any comparison, is there?
No, because he incorporated it into great songs. That's the big difference.
That's what I'm just saying. It wasn't some gimmicky sound that kind of almost sounded like some kind of sequence door chime, you know, annoying you.
which is what you could accuse quite a lot of. Well, not all the stuff now, because there is some interesting electronic music out there now. But I guess it's all about innovation, sound. And engaging the listener in some soulful, meaningful...
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, you know, if a listener takes the time and listens to some music and he gets inspired or he gets a nice vibe from it, then as far as I'm concerned, that's my job's been done, or the job of the artist has been done.
Well, Rog, you've been doing this for 50 years. This is your 50th year celebration, which is fantastic. Were you surprised, or are you surprised that A, you're still doing this, and B, rock is still so durable?
No, not at all. No, I just think, I just wish, in a way, that a few more younger people would be a little bit more adventuresome. I find them a little bit more conservative, for want of a better word.
Yeah, falling in line with what's already going on.
Yeah, or they're looking over their shoulders and they can't imagine that the future could be different. Whereas really, I mean, the fact of the matter is, the future is not the past. That's by definition. It's almost the definition of the future. So why wouldn't they be excited about what could possibly happen, you know? And why aren't they trying as hard as they can to make it happen, you know?
Well, if anybody wants to contact you, or they want to know about your foot pedals and everything else you're doing, what's the website they can...
forget the website, just Google my name, Roger Mayer,
And you'll find 50 years of chasing the sound.
Whatever.
It's been Pete Feenstra talking to Roger Mayer. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Lots of fun.
We could do this for days on end, but it's been... Get ready
it's
to...
hot and we're going to have a beer.